Connecting with the divine feminine can be as simple as simply connecting with your heart space. But whenever you get serious about this work and you want to understand the path of Shakti, this is potentially one of the deepest works that you could do in your life. Working with the 10 phases of Shakti will begin transforming your life from the inside out. And you will naturally begin embodying the energies of the goddess that you choose to work with. Now, this isn't about convincing your ego that you're a goddess and therefore the whole world must serve you. This is a deep, deep path of inner exploration and of submission to the divine feminine. So the path of Shakti is for men and women that actually want to offer themselves, their lives, their heart to the goddess and make themselves a vehicle for her healing energies to flow through you. In this video, we're going to explore the 10 Mahavidyas and all of the gifts and powers that each of these goddesses give us whenever we work with them from a very sincere place. My name is Silvana, and I am a course creator and the founder of the Venusian Academy, a space for the exploration of Shakta Tantra and the feminine arts. All right, so this video is gonna be a little bit dense. I have my notes here. I invite you to take some time to sit and feel through the energies, because as I begin talking about each goddess, each Mahavidya, we're dealing with aspects of Shakti. And Shakti is the power of Shiva. Shakti, if Shiva is that empty conscious presence, Shakti is everything that is being observed by that conscious presence. So this is going to be an exploratory journey, and it is better to understand each of the 10 Mahavidyas if we're in a space of feeling, not only hearing and cognitively understanding what I'm going to be saying, but diving into your body to see how each one of these goddesses feel in your physical vessel. So before I start, I do want to say a few things. I'm going to be sharing a few stories of how the Mahavidyas came about, and the story of Parvati and Shiva. And I want you to keep in mind that these stories, they're esoteric stories. So these are stories that, sure, you could take literally, but the best way to extract the wisdom is to understand that this is a metaphor for life. It's a metaphor for the parts of ourselves, for this divine masculine and divine feminine aspect that lives within all of us, regardless of our gender. So this is the exploration of the divine feminine. Whatever gender you're in is the exploration of your own innate divine feminine. So every time you hear this story, let's say that you're a man and you're listening to this, don't go into oh, I'm Shiva and she's Shakti. Explore Shakti as if it's a part of you, because it is. And this is going to give you the most benefit. You're going to extract the most juice and wisdom from it, looking at it from that perspective. So let's begin. All right, so Shiva and Parvati are married, and they started having an argument because Parvati's father was having a special fire ceremony that Shiva was not invited to. So Parvati wanted to go, Shiva wasn't invited, and Shiva insisted that he was going to go. Now Parvati knew that if Shiva defied her father in that way, that trouble will start. So she started arguing with him and calling him down and pacifying him, but nothing she was saying could actually stop him. And he said, I'm going to the fire ceremony and you cannot stop me. And that is the moment in which Parvati divided herself in the 10 directions, blocking Shiva from being able to go. So let's take a pause there and first of all, explore who's Parvati. So Parvati is the benevolent aspect of the Divine Mother. And Shiva is the destroyer. So in Hindu mythology, whenever you look at the divine masculine aspects of divinity, there's a trinity as well. There is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is the creator. He is the dreamer that's dreaming the world. Vishnu is the preserver of the world. And Shiva is the destroyer of the world. So Shiva is the empty consciousness, like I mentioned, and Shakti is the power of Shiva and everything that he observed. So getting back to the story, now we see that Shiva consciousness wanted to see Parvati, the divine mother's father fire ceremony, and he wasn't invited to. And the way in which she stopped him was by dividing herself into 10 directions, so he had nowhere to go. Why did this happen? Well, this happened first as a as a demonstration of the power of Shakti, because these are the powers of Shakti. And in the powers of Shakti, it actually enlightens Shiva about the divine feminine and what is it that he's observing. So this is a deeply transformational and enlightening experience for Shiva to be able to relate to each of these 10 phases of Shakti. In addition to that, Shiva became aware of the eternal love that exists between them, and that is what enlightened him. So let's begin our exploration with our first Mahavidya, the ferocious, great Kali Ma. Kali is the supreme time force. She is the reminder of our own mortality. And she's also the aspect of Shakti that consumes the temporary. She destroys in order to create and in order to keep the dance of life going. So as time, she's the great transformer, and she's also a force of evolution. More specifically, the eternal energy of evolution. So her imagery is very charged with symbolism, and every little thing in the image of Kali is symbolic of an aspect of herself. So she holds a cleaver dripping with blood. She has severe head in her hand, and she's doing mudras with her other two hands. She's also wearing a garland of severe heads and a skirt made of arms. She's on top of a surrendered Shiva, and she has a terrible expression with her tongue rolled out. Her skin is midnight blue, and her hair is just wild. So all of these symbolic representations of Kali are narrating her power, because if we're looking at Kali as the force of time herself, eventually time is gonna get all of us, like that. There's no doubt about that. In 100 years, we won't be here. So it's like the crudest aspect of life, that everything that is born and exists in this planet must eventually die. Now, whenever we start working with this energy, with this power of Shakti, she basically brings destruction to everything in your life that is not rooted in truth or in the eternal. She also brings the truth of who we really are to the surface. So inviting Kali into our lives it's probably one of like you need to put on your big girl panties on to work with Kali, because we don't know. We think that everything we build in our life is based on truth, and we have this like sense of righteousness of like, no, I've done these things because XYZ, and I'm trying to create this because of this, and I'm in this relationship, this dynamic, right? And whenever we invite this force, right, if Kali is time, that means that whatever is not real whatever is temporary in your life and was not built on truth and love and the truth of what you are will get destroyed. So eventually that will get destroyed. But working with Kali just makes it as if it gets destroyed right now. And for me, that's a blessing, because if I'm building a house of cards, I want to know now, not 5-10 years from now, where I'm already attached to it and I have built all these other structures around that house of cards, because then everything will get destroyed. I might as well just like clean up right now what's not real in my life. So this is the gift of working with Kali, is that she takes care of things quickly, and it is a humbling path, and it is the initiation into this work. Working with Kali for me is like, everybody that's interested in Shakta Tantra, if they have rejection to Kali, they're not really in the tantric path. You have to go through the gate of Kali, because this is a purifying force, and it's purifying everything in your life that's not rooted in the truth of who you are. And that's very important as we begin exploring the rest of the Mahavidyas. Astrologically, Kali rules the planet Saturn. So whenever we work with Kali, she also helps release the karmic debt that we have been carrying from our previous lives. So it is an energy that it's like, okay, you have all of these things to work through. This is the most efficient way of using time to your advantage for you to clear all of this karma, all of these unconscious actions that you've created. And there's a blessing in that, obviously. But I understand the resistance that can come with that, especially whenever we are comfortable. So the best times to begin working with Kali is when things are getting difficult, and you're not working with her so things get better. You're working with her because you're like, okay, if you're already in a bad place, might as well just take care of business, right? You could do your homework early or late. It's eventually you have to do it. We all have to do it. We all have to take responsibility for our conscious and unconscious actions. So Kali brings you the gift of bringing divine timing in alignment with her timing so that you are releasing yourself. And astrologically, if you work with her, there is a healing that happens to the planet Saturn. And if you're into astrology, you've heard about like the Saturn return and all these scary stories about Saturn. So Saturn is just, he's the lord of time. He is karma, and he doesn't let you move faster than you've built in this three-dimensional reality. There's no shortcuts with Saturn. So Kali, being the one that rules Saturn, it's a great ally to have and a great entry world into the world of Tantra, so you can begin understanding yourself and channeling the aspects of Shakti in full power, in full bloom in your life. All right, so after the transformative fires of Kali, we're moving into the second Mahavidya, Tara. So Tara is the great deliverer, and Tara literally means star in Sanskrit. She's the one that illuminates our mind, and she's also like an energy of transversing through the universe because she guides us, right? So we just got out of like the fire cauldron of Kali. And in this darkness, Tara brings in this light of saying like, let's go into this direction, right? Like it's like, it's not a light that you see. It's a light that you feel. It's like a sensation of knowing where to go, knowing that it's okay, knowing that this is the initiation. And the reason why I'm saying it's not a light that you see is because that's another Mahavidya. Tara brings a guiding light that at the same time removes obstructions from our path. And the power that Tara has is the power of sound. And as we know, sound is the root of creation. Everything in the universe got created with the first sound, which was Om. So Tara is the master of sound, and as sound, she is the one that begins creating our path from the dark space of the purification of Kali. So what does working with Tara look like practically? Well, that is this aspect of Shakti that grants us epiphanies. And these epiphanies of awareness are what liberates us from ignorance. She's like the little spark that comes after you see something in yourself and you realize something about your path. Like whenever you have the moment that feels like, oh, like that feeling, that is the light of Tara. And as the ruler of sound, she also gives us the power of silence. And the gift of silence is to be able to create the canvas for the dance of the goddesses to continue. So it's almost like whenever you're in silence, you're letting the power of Tara, of sound, to create, to remove obstacles, and to remove everything from your life that's not for your highest good. Because there are many things that, Kali is like the karmic cleanse, but Tara removes things that are unnecessary distractions in Maya. So it's almost like you don't need to go through this. You just need to go here. And the direction in which she sends us comes through that epiphany. She's also known as the goddess of compassion and protection. So she is very protective, and the devotees of Tara are constantly, doing pujas to invoke her protective powers, because she is the one that will allow you to move through life and protect you from unnecessary hurdles and unnecessary troubles on your journey. So as we're discussing each of these Mahavidyas, they will have their gifts, right? Gifts that they give us whenever we surrender to their grace and to their wisdom. And the gift of Tara is, number one, the gift of compassion, but she also gives us knowledge and the power of speech, powerful, eloquent speech, because she rules sound. But it's not the speech that comes out. See, it's the speech that like I comprehend and I understand something, and I have accumulated the wisdom through observing something in my life. Remember how I said like she's like that inner light, not the light that you see outside? So same thing. She's not the speech that I'm doing right now. She's the power of speech, of being able to articulate our thoughts, because I understood, I saw the truth and the wisdom of this specific thing in my life, or a situation or something that I'm dealing with internally. And as her savior energy of saving people from disaster, she is also freeing us from our attachments. And she helps us let go of things that we thought we needed, but in truth we don't need. So all these silly attachments that we can carry for our entire life, Tara gives us the protection from them because she shows us through epiphany that we really didn't need the thing that we needed, or that we thought that we didn't. Wait, she shows us that we don't need the things that we thought we needed. There you go. Astrologically, she rules the planet Jupiter. And what is Jupiter? Jupiter is known in Vedic astrology as the guru. Jupiter is the giver of gifts. He is this benevolent force that expands, and it's big, and it's just so sweet and gentle. It's like a sweet grandfather that just wants to love you and take care of you. And every time you go see him, he has all this wisdom to pour to you. That's the archetype of Jupiter. And Tara rules this planet. So you can start to feel the connection of this benevolent, lighting, guiding force that she offers whenever we work with her. Our next Mahavidya is Tripura Sundari. She's also known as Shodashi, and her name means the beauty of the three worlds. She's the one that has the radiance of the sun. So her light is visible. Her light is external. Remember, Tara's light was like a light in the darkness that begins within. The light of Tripura Sundari is the light of the radiant sun right after sunrise. So she is the one that reminds us of the beauty of our souls because she illuminates the beauty that we are. She also teaches us that beauty is an internal journey. And I've talked about this, so make sure you check out my previous videos about beauty because it is an internal journey. And Tripura Sundari is the guiding force that lights us into the understanding and the epiphany needed so that we can actually understand and see in ourselves that the beauty is an internal process. In her imagery, she is painted as a 16-year-old girl. And I think this is significant because, whenever we look at a 16-year-old girl, like, you have in America, like the culture of the sweet 16, and in Latin America, the quinceañeras, like there's something that happens at that age in a woman's life. And I think that's like the archetypical type of transition from being a girl into being a young woman. So being a young woman in such a young state of being 16, it's almost like it's the expression of innocent beauty. And this is the lesson and the gift that Tripura Sundari gives us. So how can we reconnect with this beautiful and innocent aspect in ourselves? So working with Sundari brings into our awareness our desires, not our attachments, but our desires, and the difference between the two. Especially if we have worked with Tara, right? Tara is the one, she helps us release these attachments. After there's this big release, the purge of attachments, then we enter into the blessing of Sundari, and she is pointing out to us and helping us connect with the energy of our pure desires. Remember that desire is the root of manifestation. And desire carries an energy of fragmentation that seeks to be whole again. So the only reason why we have a desire is because we are under the illusion that we are not that thing which we are seeking. And this is beautiful because that's why we are in this reality, to experience the separation, to return back to wholeness. So desire is rooted in this fragmentation. And as we acknowledge our desires, it's like Sundari's light is helping us become more whole and receive and acknowledge not newer, but different parts of ourselves that we were not aware that we were. And the glue to that, like the force that magnetizes and creates that wholeness again, that reunion with divinity, it's desire. The energy of this Shakti lives in our crown chakra. It's important because you're gonna notice like we have it's not gonna be a linear journey. It's not like we're starting from the root moving up. It's a dance, right? And I'm not pointing out where like Tara and Kali are, because for Sundari specifically, it's important to understand, because once we get to the Mahavidya that lives in the root chakra, we're going to see a connection. So even though I'm explaining this in a linear way, like this is the first one, second, third one, this is a journey. Remember, like she divided herself in 10 at the same time, right? So it's almost like, yes, the mind wants to make it linear so we can understand, and then after Kali, Tara, and after Tara, Sundari. But you will start seeing as we continue this exploration that all of these Mahavidyas begin weaving together and kind of like, moving in spirals and not in a line. So the gift that she gives and her power is the gift of beauty. And love is an outward flow of bliss. And when this bliss of love takes form, that's beauty. See, so beauty is a very divine energy. It's like the manifestation of love. And whenever we look at something, let's say an object that's beautiful, that has Sundari's light. If it did not have Sundari's light, it will feel grotesque and disgusting. So everything that we witness that has beauty, whether it's a person, an animal, nature, an object, is the light of Sundari, because she is like that. She is the manifestation of that love that wanted to take form, and the form that it took is the expression of beauty itself. So how does she do that? How does she give us this gift? We just become more beautiful? No, she gives us the gift of illumination of our own beauty. So whenever we are illuminated in the part of us and we're able to perceive our beauty, we have received the blessing and the boon of Tripura Sundari. Astrologically, she's the one that rules the planet Mercury. So if you have a debilitated Mercury in your chart, and this is talking about the Vedic chart, so sidereal astrology, you can do pujas or mantras or work specifically with Sundari to help heal that. Same thing with like Tara and Jupiter, and then Kali and Saturn. So I'm making the connection so you have a reference point of where to see it, where that energy is expressing itself in your life by observing your Vedic chart. Our fourth Mahavidya is Bhuvaneshwari. Her name literally means she whose body is the world. She's deeply connected with the earth, and she's also the representation of space. So the space is for consciousness, acknowledge. Her body is the entire cosmos. So whenever we sit with that energy of space, in that spaciousness, we're able to receive life. Whenever there's so much in us, like, I think I know who I am, this is who I am, this is what life is about, and all of this like knowing energy and certainty of like the things are as they are, there's no space, there's no internal space, because if you already know everything, there's no space for you to learn anything new. So the gift of Bhuvaneshwari is the ability to create internal space to receive more of life, more of the wisdom that life has for us, and also more of the gifts, more experiences, more feelings, more sensations. That is the gift that she gives us. So this is a great Mahavidya to work with if you feel like rigid into receiving life or changing things, and this rigidity that you can feel it in like your life as this like tension of like, this is the way things are, like this like rigidity. Yeah, that's the word. She loosens that and helps us create that internal space. We need internal space for manifestation. If we want to tap into our feminine energy, that's the energy of receiving from life, right? We're gonna need a lot of space. And life, it's like life is eternal. Life is so big that the capacity that you have to hold internal space is equivalent to the grandiosity of the life that you get to witness for yourself. That's the importance of Bhuvaneshwari and the gift and the power that she gives us. Whenever we have this sense of like joyful emptiness in our life, this is what allows for inspiration and creation to happen. If we don't have inspiration and if we don't have any creativity, it's most likely because we don't have the internal space for it. Because this God is like, we think it's like us, like we're creating. Oh, I'm the creator. I'm creating these things. I'm making the course. I'm making the video. But what's really happening is like we are like a radio receiver, and we're constantly receiving from life. So if you're not feeling inspired and if you're not feeling creative, it's because there's no space for inspiration and creativity to come through. So the gift of Bhuvaneshwari is like the deepening of that space and the expansion so that you can begin receiving inspiration and creativity. The Shakti power that she gives us is the gift of peace and mastery over the four elements. So it's interesting because I'm talking about inspiration and creativity. So inspiration, right? It's like if we are in a state of peace, which is the Shakti power of Bhuvaneshwari, then we're able to use the elements, which means create in physical reality because of that spaciousness that she brings. So she is a great Mahavidya to bring to our life for mental problems. She also rules the planet Moon. I'm sorry, not the planet, but she rules the moon in the Vedic chart, and in Vedic astrology, the moon is our mind. It's our emotions as well, but it's like our emotions because of the way that our mind is wired. So if you begin healing moon in the Vedic chart, there's like a peace of mind and a clarity that comes. And with that spaciousness, a spiritual spaciousness that she creates, we have the ability of master the 4 elements to bring our inspirations into life. And that is what creativity is. Our 5th Mahavidya is Bhairavi. This is going to be an intense one. And complex too. So I'll do my best to explain it as clearly as possible. But this conversation might feel a little bit more disconnected because Bhairavi's energy is, for me, I experience it in a very complex way. And I will say that she feels more heated and transformational than Kali. And I'll share why. So let's start with her name. Her name Bhairavi means the terrible one. That's why it's an intense energy. She is the fierce warrior goddess. And she's actually the overseer of the 3 male deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So she oversees the 3 male deities. The other goddesses don't oversee them. The other goddesses are in like a mutual interaction with it. But Bhairavi, as the terrible one, has this witnessing factor over the divine masculine. So she has the role of educator, and it is said in the in ancient tantric texts that it was actually through Bhairavi's grace that we have the Vedas, and the Vedas are the wisdom written. So that is her expression as the role of education about the nature of this universe. So Bhairavi is the great energizer of creation, and working with her, it's a hands-off experience of a spiritual fire. And that is the best way to describe what she feels like. It's like a spiritual fire within. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my notes for this piece here because... So when consciousness is concentrated on itself and it's energized for action, it creates tapas. And Bhairavi is the tapas of the divine. So we have our own personal tapas, but the tapas of Bhairavi, they actually live in the root chakra. So remember how I said like Sundari lives in the crown chakra? Well, Bhairavi lives in the root chakra. And Bhairavi is, because she lives in the root chakra, she is the heat that's generated from concentration on the self. So this is actually good, right? Like if she's the one that generates the heat that allows us to concentrate on the true self, then why is she called the terrible one? Well, she is terrible for those people that find pleasure in division, or the ones that cling on to this idea of separation. Her terrible aspect comes because she destroys that, and she destroys it through internal heat, because whenever we're concentrated on the self, we're kind of ignorant to everything else that is not the self. However, for those people that strive for spiritual progress, she actually destroys fear. So for me personally, whenever I experience fear, I experience it as like a cold, disassociative. It's like a vacuum that feels cold, right? And it's like even my body feels that way. So Bhairavi's destructive power comes in the destruction of fear. Whenever we work with her, it's almost as if she releases this whole notion of separation, and then you start feeling the heating power of like her tapas, because it's divine tapas. So it's not my own, it's the divine's. Now this heat is dormant energy, and because it lives in the root chakra, it's actually the dormant kundalini. So every time that you read or learn about like the dormant kundalini energy, we're dealing with Bhairavi, and the kundalini rising happens through the grace of Bhairavi. So you have to go through her to have this experience. And I know a lot of people claim like, oh, my kundalini is rising, but you see, it's like We have the two polarities. We have Bhairavi at the root and we have Sundari at the crown. So Bhairavi is the concentration of the self and the heat that's generated from that deep concentration on the self. And whenever that heat gets released through the grace of Bhairavi, it becomes Sundari. So Sundari being this energy of beautification, it's almost like we're able to see, like whenever Bhairavi releases the heat of her tapas and that Kundalini rises into the crown, that's when we become illuminated to Sundari, and everything we observe is beautiful because we see Sundari in everything in our life. So the best way to know if your Kundalini has rising is, are you perceiving everything in your life, in yourself, and the world as beautiful? Because if not, Bhairavi is still holding, generating that heat, internal heat of self-concentration. And that is her gift. As she's there, she's burning up our weaknesses and purifying our souls. She's the one that prepares us to receive Soma, and Soma is the nectar of immortality that Sundari gives us, is that eternal consciousness. So if we're still living in a reality of fear, Bhairavi, the terrible one, that's the one that you want to work with. That's the energy that you want. And it requires the concentration of the self, and it requires you returning to the root chakra. So a lot of things in spirituality are connected with the crown chakra. Like, how do I elevate, rise my consciousness, leave the thing, astral project, all of these things that are like elevated up here. But Bhairavi heals us and releases us from the fear in the root chakra. And the root chakra is like the seat of the power. It is the connection to our animal body. It is the connection to the earth. So she does require a humbling attitude when working with her, because she is the one that's going to liberate us from our fear. So we have to trust this process and descend into the body to work with her. Our next Mahavidya is Chinnamasta. Chi whose head is severed. So Chinnamasta is the self-decapitated goddess. And she decapitated herself to feed her devotees. So in her imagery, we can see that she is feeding her head with her blood and her two attendants as well. Good questions to explore with the image of Chinnamasta is, why did she decapitate herself? And why is she drinking her own blood? So Chinnamasta's teachings are extremely esoteric in nature. And because of that, it's a little bit hard for me to explain, because it's mostly a sensorial experience. That's why ask yourself like those two questions whenever you're observing the image. Like, what does that mean to you, to your own Shakti, the self-decapitating goddess that is drinking her own blood and feeding her blood to her two attendants as well? We understand that light and sound created the universe. When light is limited, space is created. And this is Bhuvaneshwari. Whenever this limitation takes the form of duration, we have time, so we have Kali. When light gets involved in creation as the everythingness of creation itself, we have Sundari. Then the unmanifested sound turned toward itself in concentrated consciousness is Bhairavi. The sound that perceives itself and the wisdom to know that is the sound perceiving itself, that's Tara. And now the interaction between light and sound to cause creation, that's Chinnamasta. That's why I say like this is like a deeply esoteric teaching that she gives us, and the best way to begin with this is contemplating her image. So a good starting point for this is to understand like what is the goal of creation. The goal of creation was to cut off the many from the oneness of what is, in order for us to become individual existence. Can you feel like the decapitation of the multiple heads, and kind of like how this energy gives birth to Chinnamasta? So my experience of Chinnamasta, it's like thunder. Kali works with time, right? So it's almost like there's this like slower aspect to her power, even though it feels very fast for some parts of the self. But Chinnamasta, like you don't even see her coming. It's like thunder. And she produces psycho-spiritual changes in ourselves. She cuts off the head, which symbolizes the mind. And this cutting goes both ways. It's both the cutting of the head of the Lord, of the oneness, right? Like we cut off the head of oneness to become multiple identities, multiple expressions of the divine. That is Chinnamasta's power. And she also cuts us off from all these identities that we have clinged on to. that keep us in separation. So because of this, she's actually the ruler of very sudden events, either sudden losses, sudden gains, everything in your life that's like, that's the power of Chinnamasta. So if you're working with a very stubborn pattern in your life, and you're like something needs to radically transform to move this energy, Chinnamasta is the great Mahavidya for this type of work, just because of her swiftness and effectiveness. Unlike Kali, that uses the element of time to bring the inevitable end of things, Chinnamasta feels like a thunder, like I said. Astrologically, she is represented by Rahu, and Rahu is the North Node, and Rahu is this part of the self that is just like in this hunger, wanting to permeate Maya. It's aware that it's in Maya, but it's lost in this illusion, or it gets easily lost in this illusion. So if there are parts of your life, or you have a debilitated Rahu, or parts of your life where there's this like uncontrollable impulse to go into something, calling in Chinnamasta's grace and blessing is a great way to heal this energy in your life. The seventh Mahavidya is Dhumavati. She's called the widow goddess, and she represents the most brutal and difficult aspects of life. Things like hunger, despair, poverty, that's what she represents. In her imagery, she is depicted as being ugly, with messed up hair. She's seen as being in a cart, usually with two crows. And there is this very desolate feeling that her image gives us. So the story says that she ate her husband Shiva. And she ate him as a result of her hunger. And after eating him, she started emitting smoke from her body. That's why she's also known as the smoky one. So what does this represent? This means that she is the energy of unconsciousness. She is the non-being that created the being, and then the being that eventually goes back into non-being. She's the state before creation, the eldest, and the smoky swallower of the universe. She's the darkness being hidden by the darkness, and she offers us profound wisdom. So Dhumavati is the older sister of Lakshmi. And so in Vedic astrology, we have the nakshatras, the lunar mansions. And Rohini nakshatra is ruled by Lakshmi. Opposite to that nakshatra, we have Jyeshta nakshatra. So Jyeshta is another name for Dhumavati and is ruled by Dhumavati. So if Dhumavati symbolizes this poverty and hunger, and she's also the eldest sister of Lakshmi, they're constantly looking at one another. And whenever we see images of Lakshmi, Lakshmi is sometimes seen as riding the owl. The owl is also a representation of Dhumavati. So what is the wisdom that we can extract from that visual? Well, being in the seat of Dhumavati allows us to witness and bring our awareness and consciousness into all of the unconsciousness of life, into the pain of life, into the suffering. Because if I'm Lakshmi, and right across from me, I'm seeing my elder sister, Lakshmi, which is also another nickname for Dhumavati, I am having to look at the face, the pain of despair. Even though I'm the embodiment of this divine wholeness energy, I'm looking at the despair and the pain and hunger and poverty. So she gives us the wisdom of compassion to be able to perceive the pain of unconsciousness, because she ate Shiva. She devoured consciousness. And it's like the darkness before the darkness and the darkness after life that continues to keep this being and not being into motion. So she's a very powerful goddess to work with whenever we feel this sense of absolute desolation and feeling of just the feeling of like death within ourselves. She is the one that can help us continue the movement, because there's this saying, I don't know where I heard this, but it's something like if you're in hell, don't park there. It's almost like keep moving through like the dark times of life. So from that perspective, Dhumavati, being the darkness devourer, like that hides in the darkness and being the non-being aspect, she can help us continue this movement back into being. Our next Mahavidya is Bagalamukhi. She's often referred to as the paralyzer of enemies. She has the resisting power that can just turn things around. So it's the power of 180-degree movements in life. Her energy is the one that makes the rich poor and the poor rich and the cold hot and hot things cold. And it's this immediate reversal. So the paralyzing aspect of that, right? It's like if I'm launching an attack, I can temporarily pause it, and in temporarily pausing that, the energy is reversing itself onto source. That is the power of Bagalamukhi. As an arresting energy, she is the striking power of the mother that stifles all action and activity. And as a very protective goddess, she rules speech and the power to stop it. So working with her is either the energy of speechlessness or the energy of intuitive speech. What side of her are you gonna get? It depends on what is going to be said. So if you've ever been in a situation where like you were in an argument and you're about to say something and there's this like freeze response, yes, we have the freeze response from like trauma, but if it stopped us from saying something that would have created a lot of damage, that is the grace of Bagalamukhi. It's almost like she stops us from throwing poison out. At the same time, whenever we like get caught off guard by something and then we just say the perfect thing in the perfect flow at the perfect time using the most appropriate words, that's also the power of Bagalamukhi. So her energy feels very active and also very striking. So it's like stop, go. And her power of paralyzation, it's only temporary. And in that temporary pause that happens, that's when we experience the reversal of the energy. So that's why she's considered the paralyzer of enemies. Her Shakti power is the power to temporarily suspend the actions of nature. And we are nature. An animal is also nature. So she's a very powerful Mahavidya, and astrologically, she's the one that rules the planet Mars. Our next Mahavidya is Matangi. Matangi is a tantric form of Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, music, and learning. She's thought to be an outcast, and she's also the ruler of the sun in our charts. She's the word expressed as speech and our ability to comprehend it and express it as a magnetic force. So do you remember when I was explaining Tara that she wasn't the word of itself, like the speech itself, but it was more like an internal knowing? Matangi is the power of a speech to magnetize our desires to us. So working with her gives us the power of attraction, magnetism, leadership. She also brings magical knowledge of Tantra, mantra, and victory in our life. Remember that she rules the sun, and the sun is the king. But for me personally, the most precious gift that Matangi gives us is the gift of discernment. So working with her will help you gain victory and attraction, but it's from a very discerning place. It doesn't come from this the ego nature that wants that because it feels weak or it feels like lower than, or there's unworthiness stuff there. It's a victory that comes from being able to discern truth from not truth. And the final of the 10 Mahavidyas is Kamala. She is the lotus goddess, and she is the tantric form of Lakshmi. So she is the goddess of abundance, beauty, luxury, everything that we want to experience in life. Because of this, she's actually the most popular of the 10 Mahavidyas, and everybody wants Kamala because who doesn't want that? But we have to understand that she's an aspect of the 10, and there's no linear hierarchy. It's all a spiral, and Kamala is Kamala because of her 9 supportive Mahavidya parts of herself, of her Shakti. So she rules over luxuries, comfort, safety, abundance. So obviously she is connected to planet Venus in our charts. Working with this particular goddess is a very healing experience because she is the one that reminds us to share our joy, our gift, and our abundance with those around us. Her consort is not Shiva, it's actually Vishnu. And remember that Vishnu is the preserver. So she's also a reminder of the power of preservation. She's the one that provides the necessary field for the expression of beauty and bliss in our lives. So she is the manifestation of the consciousness and the revelation of beauty. Bagalamukhi stops and paralyzes while Kamala sets in motion and manifests. Her gifts are a cornucopia. Abundance, beauty, luxuries. But this is the last of the Mahavidya. So my suggestion is to always start working with Kali and then see where Kali leads you next. Eventually for me, Kamala feels more like, she's not a goddess that I like go towards. She feels more like an energy that comes to you. It's like a grace. It's something that simply blooms. And we have to remember also like the symbolism of the lotus, right? The lotus just blooms. It reveals itself. It's not like this action. Like for example, Bhairavi is very, she rules the tapas of the divine. So it's like this heated energy of like concentration and power, where Kamala is just like the revelation of beauty and manifestation. So it is an energy to receive. That's why I don't put a lot of emphasis and focus in my personal spiritual practice on Kamala, because it feels like she finds me constantly in the moments that I need her grace. So this helps us get a better understanding of the 10 Mahavidyas. But in order to truly understand their power and work with her, it's an experiential journey, which means that it's important to create a sadhana, a spiritual practice where we are intentionally connecting with each aspect of Shakti. And it is in this act of devotion, of creating that practice with them and worship, that they'll begin revealing their grace and powers into our lives. They have occult wisdom about the nature of life, about the nature of creation. Ever since I started my journey with the 10 Mahavidyas, it's been like one thing after another of just like understanding and ordering and organizing. And it's not like I got all my dreams manifested and these are the steps. It's more of a deepening into myself, a deeper understanding of my path, my journey of who I am, and also an expanded curiosity to get to know parts of myself that I even thought of before, parts of myself that are still unfolding. And just like the eternal 1,000-petal lotus, I think we have that same energy within ourselves, that these working with these goddesses like reveal over our entire life. So this isn't something that like, oh, I'm gonna do for 10 years so that later on this happens. This is like a deepening into the self. And the more that we understand about life, the more that life gives us more of itself, so we can expand our internal universe and find the truth of who we really are. So if you would like to begin working with the 10 Mahavidyas and you don't know when to start, I invite you to check out my mentorship program, Varani. So Varani is a 3-month mentorship program, and we began specifically focused during that time just with working with Kali. The reason why I designed it that way is because once you have the foundation of working with Kali, it's very easy to expand and let Kali herself guide you to like the next space. But I will definitely teach you about like the different aspects, and we'll look at your Vedic chart so you can see the specific houses, the specific planets that are in your 8th house or aspect in your 8th house, which is the house of the occult and dead and tantra and all these things, to trigger those energies. And I'll teach you how to create a sadhana and how to worship each of these goddesses so they can begin gracing your life. This mentorship will give you a very strong foundation so you can continue your journey solo, and you won't need to, you'll know what books to get, you'll know the foundational practices. And as with everything, like once you have the foundation established, you'll begin attracting the teachers, information, books, resources that you need to continue your exploration. So I'm gonna leave the link on the description box below. Check it out and let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, remember to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.